Balaba Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vonachari Jamuna Dira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vonachari Jamuna Tira Vonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vonachari Jamuna Tira Vonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Chamuna Tira Vanachari Chamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jaya Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Paribrajaka Charja Stotara Sada Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Paribrajaka Charja Stotara Sada Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Jagaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol Shamaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaivam narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udiyayat nashapareshu abhadareshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamishlokir bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 16th chapter, 8th text. Is that 7th text? Let's see. Yasmin Ritamala. Is that correct? Oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong one. Yatsevaya Charana Padma Pavitra Charana Padma Pavitra Renum Sadhyaha Shatakila Ishatita Malam Pratilabda Shilam Na Shrir Diriktam Api Mam Vichahati Yasyaha Prekshalabharta Itiare Niyaman Vahanti Yatsevaya Charana Padma Pavitra Renum Sadyakshatakila Malam Pratilabda Shilam Nashrir Viraktam Apimam Vijahati Vasyaha Rakshali Bharata Itare Niyamanam Vihanti Sadhak Shakti Kila Malam Patilab Shailam Nashri Viraktam Api Mam Bihati Asyaha Prakshali Bharte Itare Niyamanam Avahanti Yatsevaya Charana Padma Pavitrarinum Sadyak Shatakila Malam Patilabda Shilam Nashrir Viraktam Apimam Bhijati Yasyaha Vakshalavata Itare Niyamanam Bahanti. Word for word. Yat, of whom? Sevaya, by the service. Charana, feet. Padma, lotus. Pavitra, sacred. Renum, the dust. Sadyaha, immediately. Shata, wiped out. Akila, all. Malam, sins. Pratilabdha, acquired. Shilam, disposition. Na, not. Shrihi, the goddess of fortune. Viraktam, have no attachment. Api, even though. Mam, me. Vijahati, leave. Yasyaha, of the goddess of fortune. Preksha, Prekshalava Artaha, for obtaining a slight favor. Itare, others like Lord Brahma. Niyamam, Niyaman, sacred vows. Vihanti, observe. Translation. The Lord continued, because I am the servitor of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sin. And I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her, and others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight favor. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The relationship between the Lord and his devotees is transcendently beautiful. As the Lord thinks that it is due to being a devotee of the Lord that he is elevated in all good qualities, so the Lord also thinks that it is because of his devotion to the servitor that all his transcendental glories have increased. In other words, as the devotee is always anxious to render service to the Lord, so the Lord is ever anxious to render service to the devotee. The Lord admits herein that although he certainly has the quality that anyone who receives a slight particle of the dust of his lotus feet becomes at once a great personality, this greatness is due to his affection for his devotees. It is because of this affection that the goddess of fortune does not leave him, and that not only one, but many thousands of goddesses of fortune engage in his service. In the material world, simply to get a little favor from the goddess of fortune, people observe many rigid regulations of austerity and penance. The Lord cannot tolerate any inconvenience on the part of the devotee. He is therefore famous as Bhakta Vatsala. Translation of the verse again. The Lord continued, because I am the servitor of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sins, and I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her. And others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight favor. Narayanam namaskritam naram chaivam narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shlokir bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So one thing that the Lord makes clear in this verse is that there is a form of reciprocity that always takes place, a reciprocal relationship between God and his devotees. It's so much a reciprocal relationship that sometimes Prabhupada said that even the students or disciples become the guru of their guru. He said that, and he ended up by saying that is the position. I have so many disciples, I have to train them. Those are his exact words as it's been translated. So the idea is of reciprocity. That Prabhupada has even gone to the extent of saying that a disciple can be a guru, can be the guru of his disciple. It's a very hard thing to understand, but that explains it, a lot of it. I think I can read the exact passage. The spiritual master, this is from the 27th of October, 1972 in Vrindavan. The spiritual master does not think of himself as Hari. Although he's offered the respect of Hari, he thinks himself as a humble servant of Hari and all others. A spiritual master takes his disciples as his spiritual master. That is the position. He thinks that, open quote, Krishna has sent me so many spiritual master, close quote. He does not think himself as a spiritual master. He thinks himself as their servant. Because they have to be trained. Krishna has appointed him to train them. Therefore, he thinks himself as the servant of the disciples. This is the position. So when one is advanced, he can see the importance of a devotee. These are the words of Prabhupada when he was lecturing on the nectar of devotion at that time. And this is what these are his actual recorded words. So one thing that Prabhupada told us, that all these great acharyas, they were not only philosophers, but they were also poets. And a poet, or kavi, is one of the 26 qualifications of a devotee. That a devotee must choose the right words so that they become poetic. And in 1977, I'm going to read this, he was speaking and he said there was a great Bengali poet who was a very rich man, Michael Madhusudan Dutta. So he went to England, and because he was extravagant, he spent all his money. So he was in difficulty. He begged some money from his countrymen to help him, but nobody gave him. And then there was a man, also who was a well-known poet, who got the money from this man, and from Madhusudan Dutta. And Prabhupada, that's where he heard the phrase that we should. And this poet praised Madhusudan Dutta as being a man with the courage of an Englishman and the heart of a Bengali mother. You may have heard this phrase before: the heart of an Englishman, the courage of an Englishman, and the heart of a Bengali mother. When Prabhu Vishnu Maharaj, or Prabhu Vishnu Prabhu, formerly Maharaj, went to Bangladesh to preach and came back. He remembered that phrase very clearly, that Prabhupada told him that when you go to Bangladesh, you have to preach with the courage of an Englishman and the heart of a Bengali mother. And he went on to say what that meant, that the courage of an Englishman was that they were very courageous in establishing their empire. They went on boats. They even tried to stop the American colonies from being subservient to them. They lost that war. And I'm testify to that. But they were very courageous, and they had colonies all over the world, including Africa, and they were very courageous. And the Bengali mother is known to be very warm to her offspring, so she can have a very warm heart. So the courage of an English man or English soldier and the heart of a Bengali mother became a sort of catchphrase And it's part of what Allen Ginsberg called the Hindu granny wisdom. But Prabhupada talked about a lot of these things that weren't necessarily part of Vedic literature, but he was so versed in all this kind of literature, and he heard so much when he was young about from the Mahabharata, from the Ramayana, that he knew many of these names of people, and he was very intent upon us learning how to say things in Sanskrit, even though we didn't know the language. I for one, but first I learned, and I was encouraging Prabhupada to teach us Sanskrit. It was Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Nadi Radhi Govinda Sarvakaranam, which is one of the early verses of Brahma Samhita. And when I was leaving New York to go to the West Coast, and I recited that verse, Prabhupada just lit up like a light bulb. Like he knew that one of his disciples had learned a Sanskrit verse, just a simple verse, 2 lines, but he was very serious and very stern throughout the conversation. But when I spoke a few words in the language that he was very expert with, very familiar with, his countenance completely changed, and he became like a little child almost. So that's a reciprocity that's very important. And like Krishnadas Kaviraj, who wrote the Caitanya Caritamrita, Kavi means poet, and Raj means king. So literally, that Krishnadas Kaviraj was the king of the poets. He was not only a philosopher, but he was a poet. So these great philosophers chose their words very carefully, and they were edited and translated very carefully. And there's a group called the BBT panel, something. Not revision, but BBT something panel. I thought that revision was too strong of a word, so it's an analysis. And Krishna Rupa, I think she's the chairman of that organization. But it includes Keshava Bharati and Radha Raman, who's a professor now in Ohio. And they're in their mission statement, or their statement of purpose, they say that they are very careful about changing even one word that Prabhupada used, because he was very, very careful about what words were chosen and what words were translated. And his main translator, who was Jayadvaita, was also cautioned to be very careful about making any changes. And some of his editors were actually dismissed because they changed so much. One of the things that Prabhupada disliked very intensely was that they changed cow protection to the word cattle. And it was thought to be very astute on the part of the translator, but actually it was a very wrong thing. And Prabhupada wanted to preserve the concept of cow protection, because that's what it actually was. That's the duty of a Vaishya, is cow protection. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are not, because of their ruling on behalf of Krishna as Shaktavesha avatars, sometimes they even make errors. There's an instance in a previous kalpa where Brahma became lusty after his own daughter. And actually he discarded that body, and he threw it off, and he was forgiven by Krishna, who knows that there's a statement that Jiva Goswami made in one of his writings, and Prabhupada said that we should always remember the maxim that one man's food is another man's poison. So what a muni is, who is learned, means that he has to differ from every other muni in some slight way. So that the point that Jiva Goswami was making, there may be differences between what one spiritual master says and what another spiritual master says, but that's not important. That Jiva Goswami was writing about principles, not details. So, and that's one of the ways he was saying that principles are the more important. That we have to chant 16 rounds. When we chant them, where we chant them, and how we chant them, whether we're in kirtan or japa, those are details. But what's really important is that once we're initiated, we have to chant a certain number of rounds every day. So Prabhupada was very, he was a student at, I think it was Scottish Churches College, which was then a subsidiary of Calcutta University. So he learned, because it's an English medium, it was an English medium school, he learned a lot about the English language. And throughout his writings, we find many maxims of English, like cleanliness is next to godliness, and God helps those that help themselves, and so on and so forth. Because his teachers were Scottish, and they wanted all of their students to learn proper English. So one of the ways that proper English was learned was that they studied some of the experts in the English language, like Geoffrey Chaucer and I forget, and there was a number of them. But Prabhupada sometimes even quotes them, or he cites that one of the things he quoted was from A Midsummer Night's Dream, one of Shakespeare's plays, and the quotation was that the poet, the lover, and the madman are all similar. They're all of a mind. I think the actual quotation from the drama is that they're all of a mind compact. The poet, the lover, and the madman. So in another place in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says it's not Prabhupada says, it's an actual verse that people either who are completely mad or paramahansas, who are completely detached from the material world, are unusual people, but anyone who's in between those two extremes is not as perfect. But a paramahansa or a madman who's completely rejecting the material world and he has no part in it, he's just completely mad or completely aloof, that person is very spiritually advanced, even though by material standards he may be considered a madman. Lord Kapila, when he was present on the earth, he was walking completely naked, and people were passing urine and stool right on his body because he was thought to be completely mad. He was just wandering about naked. So the point is that even though he was wandering about in that state of dress or undress, as we call it, he was still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So even though a person may be appearing to be completely insane or mad from a material point of view, he can be very spiritually advanced. Once I went on a little walk with some devotees through a park in Zurich called the Spritzplatz, and the government supplies needles and drugs to heroin addicts. They supply them with a drug called apomorphine, and they do this because they want them to be using clean materials, clean needles, clean drugs. And what was really amazing is that almost not everybody, but at least half the people said, I was with a few devotees, and as soon as they saw us in devotee clothes, and shaved heads, and dhotis, they said, Hare Krishna. So, and someone else told me that they visited an insane asylum in somewhere in the United States. I mean, these people were certified as being clinically insane. You know, they just didn't have any power of reasoning. But the same thing happened, that many of these so-called insane people said Hare Krishna as the devotees walked through the facility. So the idea is that if we're completely mad, we shouldn't care what people think, because that's a sign of Krishna consciousness. There's there's narrated in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Bharat Maharaj. He's the person after whom India was named, Bharat. And he was very advanced, and at a very young age, at 24 years old, when he had a very beautiful wife, he had the best food, he had the best entertainment, and everyone adulated him like anything because he was the king. He left everything and he became a sannyasi, a renunciate. At age 24, he just walked away from everything. He walked away from his kingdom, from his very beautiful, obedient wife, from his children, everything was left completely behind. And then at the last moment, when he was living in the forest, he became attached to a small deer cub, a yearling. And as he was thinking about this animal, he tripped and fell, and that was the last thing he was thinking about. And so he had to take birth as a human being, but he could remember his past life as a deer. So he played the part of Jadbharat, of a completely dumb madman, completely unable to deal with the material world. And he knew that that's what he had to do if he was going to advance spiritually. So then the story goes on. You probably know this. The king, it was Rahugana, I think, who saw him as a madman, and he asked him to help ferry his palanquin across the wherever he was going. But because the Yadbharat was playing the part of a madman, and he was avoiding stepping on ants, the carriage or the palanquin was jiggling, and King Rahugana became very disturbed with him, and that's the whole conversation between the madman and King Rahugana is very instructive. That even a madman can be spiritually advanced. That's the moral of the story. So I'm going to read the verse again, and then see if you have anything to say about it. The Lord continued. Questions. The Lord continued, because I am the servitor of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sin. And I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her, and others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight favor. I mentioned one of the devotees who was a sannyasi who lost the sannyasi position and started wearing a different color because Krishna is also known as Baba Grahi Janardana, because he's very forgiving. Even if one does a little bit of devotional service during his lifetime, that person is forgiven and given a chance to pick up Krishna consciousness right where he or she left off. So that's the forgiving nature of Krishna, Baba Grahi Janardana. He looks at the devotional quality, even if one doesn't follow through with it, doesn't stay with it his whole life or her whole life. He's very generous and very forgiving. So these are some of the points that this verse brought to my mind. So are there any comments or questions? I'll read the verse once more. The Lord continued, because I am the servitor of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sin. And I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her, and others praise her beauty, and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight favor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the class. You were speaking about Srila Prabhupada's books and changing and not changing them. It seems like a very difficult service, because Srila Prabhupada requested his editors specifically to make his books perfect, because he wanted them to be placed in university.
Free of error.
Yes, how did they do this service without being so criticised by everybody for so-called changing Prabhupada's books?
Well, we live by these words that are found in these books. And in one sense, some of them have been changed, because Jayadvaita was his main editor. And he chose Jayadvaita not because he was a highly educated or learned individual, but because he had a grasp of what Prabhupada was saying. So he only changed words very sparingly. And this BBT review, it's called review panel, is in their which they had a statement, they had a mission statement that was written by Radha Raman, who's one of the youngest PhDs in Oxford, by the way. He comes from Idaho, and he was homeschooled. He wrote that one has to be very careful with the ISKCON review panel about changing even one word. Now the word yuga I don't know if you know this, but the word yuga Y-U-G-A, is an English word. It's in the English dictionaries, in both the Oxford English Dictionary and the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Over 100 years it's been an English word. And sometimes Prabhupada uses the word millennium to mean same thing as yuga. Sometimes he uses the word yuga. The yuga, Satya Yuga millennium, he sometimes says. So they have to be very careful. They don't want to change every use of the word millennium to the word yuga, even though it means the same thing. If you look in dictionaries, the word millennium usually refers to a long period of time, like 1,000 years is the first definition. But a second definition is that it's a very long time, so it could also be a yuga. I'm just saying that one has to in a sense, to be poetic is to choose the right word for the right occasion. And that's kind of what Prabhupada was saying, what Bhavagrahi Janardana is, that even if someone doesn't complete the whole course of Krishna consciousness, whatever service he or she has rendered is taken as a progress in Krishna consciousness. And even though they may be rejected at some point by Prabhupada, still Krishna does not reject them.
So, as a society who follows Srila Prabhupada, we have to, because Srila Prabhupada initiated this editing process, should we humbly accept that it changes, or is it something that we should be continuously debating? Because it seems there's a lot of...
Well, there's a lot of controversy and debate that's going on, and I can't really say a lot of things because I know what I'm saying is going all over the world. And if I say one thing that's wrong or controversial, it might go viral. So I have to be very careful. I mean, we don't live in the same age. When we were just talking to the people in the room or on the walk or in the lecture hall, we're talking to everybody in the whole world, especially to people who stay glued to their screens for hours a day just to find mistakes. There are such people. I mean, I'm addressing you now, and you know who you are. So we have to be careful about what we do. So even though there's a lot of debate going on about controversial things, it's said somewhere in the Vedic literature that Krishna is the complete answer to everything controversial. That he can make everything okay, even though there seems to be some differences in the details. But Krishna is the master of making everything all right. Sometimes we notice that when Prabhupada spoke to people who were inimical to Krishna consciousness, that he didn't speak any philosophy. He just kept a very friendly conversation going, and made that person feel that maybe they were doing all right. So we learned a lot. That there are times to be very strict and very harsh, and there are times to be very gentle and loving, according to time, place, and circumstance. And Prabhupada was a master of that. When he knew that a person was inimical to Krishna consciousness, he didn't try to force them to adopt the principles of Krishna consciousness. Although when he was talking with scholarly people, he philosophically would routinely defeat them and would find fault with what they were saying and what they were doing in their philosophy. But Krishna consciousness is a very complex philosophy. You can become a demon, you can go from a demon to a devotee, and vice versa, as happened with Jaya and Vijaya. And it was all for Krishna's pleasure. Because there's no fighting in the spiritual world, he had to send his two doorkeepers to the material world and to fight with them there. And then they got back to their original position, as we know. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll stop at that point. Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.